Hey guys, so with my last few YouTube videos, I'm getting quite a few questions about why EVs don't have maintenance, why EVs don't use oil, kind of those kind of questions. So what I'm gonna do is I created this brand new series called EV Whiteboard, and I want to explain to you guys what EVs are, how they work, how they perform in different temperatures. So it's just basically an introductory series on everything EVs, really. So another thing too that I'm getting is a lot of people ask, well, how are you even qualified to teach us about this stuff? So I just wanted to go over that really quick because a lot of people ask like, hey, what do you do for a living? All that kind of stuff. So first, I got my degree in electronic engineering quite a few years back. I have 8+ years in test engineering specifically. So I really enjoy it because you get to break things and then keep testing it over and over and make sure it's better each time over. And then some of the companies that I've worked with was the big three, definitely, obviously Fiat, Chrysler, Dodge, Ram. Ford specifically, and then GM, GMC, Chevrolet. I've worked in multiple industries, so I have worked with Boeing products before, SpaceX, Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, a lot of aerospace companies, and of course NASA. Some of the areas that I've worked in is I've switched jobs somewhat often. So a lot of the jobs were, first one was safety, then I got into like military. Didn't really like military because you're basically designing products to kill people. And then we got aerospace, consumer products, aeronautics. And then now, for the people that are asking, my current job is a senior satellite test engineer for an aerospace company. And basically the satellites that I work on are called CubeSats. And CubeSats are basically, it goes by, well, literally the name, CubeSat. So these satellites are extremely small, super small, that go into orbit. And what they do is, the size of them is 10 cubic centimeters. So if you think of a little cube that's 10 by 10 by 10, that's 1U it's called. So a lot of these cubes are like 4U and up. So you'll have like one that I'm technically working on right now, an avionics level, which I assume not many people are going to understand this, but anyways, is a 2U. So I got this size little satellite that powers up an entire satellite, and then you got also a payload that connects to it. So these things are pretty small. They kind of like shoebox, and that's what I work on day-to-day basis, is basically testing from absolute start to finish. So it's going from board level, just power systems and communication systems. We build it up into this avionics level. Then we get the customer payload attached to it, and then it turns into this satellite that's probably like 20 pounds or so. And then we just literally test it constantly, just every single, we want to make sure it's going to launch and survive the launch, you know, via SpaceX or Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, maybe in the future. So yeah, and then another thing, a little fun fact about satellites, because a lot of people probably think, you know, there's like that meme going around or info going around that says like, there's too much junk in space. It's very true, but it's not because of new satellites. This in like the 60s and 70s, without getting too far into this, the whole world was throwing up as much crap as they possibly could into space. Like we're talking like just giant canisters for fuel and different satellites that just absolutely died on orbit. You know, there's a lot of stuff that are just, it's gigantic in there, up there. So the problem is once those hit something, once they go dead, there's no thrusters. And once they hit something, it's going to shatter into a billion pieces. And it's actually been on the news because of that. Well, these things are traveling at a minimum about 25,000 kilometers per hour or 15,000 miles per hour. And when that happens, these things just explode like crazy. And there's a million pieces everywhere scattered. It's outrageous. Well, we have to worry about that, but we don't really have to worry about CubeSats, because new satellite technology like CubeSats and microsats are a lot bigger. They weigh hundreds of pounds. These aren't the normal NASA satellites that everybody is used to, like Kepler. Those things weigh tons. It's ridiculous. It takes hundreds of millions of dollars to develop all that technology and then get it up into space. And you have like basically one shot at it. Now technology is getting so good and so small that we have this little teeny satellite that goes into space, and it can do a lot of the stuff that you'd expect it not to be able to do, especially like SpaceX. They're doing their internet service. They're just launching a bunch of these little CubeSats. And that's exactly the whole point. Instead of launching one giant one that covers an X amount of area of Earth, you can launch a couple hundred of these CubeSats and it'll cover the entire world, and they're super cheap. Like product end, I think the customer pays about $3 million per satellite. Whereas like I think Kepler was a couple $100 million for one satellite. So obviously SpaceX is gonna be like, yeah, keep throwing all these satellites into space. I don't care. They're so cheap. CubeSats and microsats, they have basically like a shelf life, and after X amount of years too, if they start getting a little bit too close to the gravitational pull, they get pulled back into Earth's orbit and they burn up in the atmosphere. So it's kind of like a win-win. You get like 5-10 years out of it, and then it kind of just kills itself. But the other stuff that's way up in there in Leo geo orbit, there's just a lot of it, and if it hits something, it's going to cause some major issues. And a little fun fact again is, if you've ever read Seven Eves, there's a book out there that says like the moon explodes. You know, it's pretty interesting. I read it, but they tell you about if it actually does explode, all these millions and billions of particles are just going to be surrounding Earth, and it's going to block out the sun. Kind of along the same concept. We do not have that much junk around Earth's orbit, but you know, it's an interesting read because that's what people are really freaking out about. Don't freak out about it. The new technology is new CubeSats and microsats and etc. Like NASA doesn't really send out too much satellite technology like that size anymore. There's just, why spend $200 million on one where you can pop out like a couple hundred CubeSats that do the exact same thing for a fraction of the cost. And if one dies, okay, you got 199 left. So, but one dies now, like a giant one, you're SOL. So.